G'day, welcome to Being a Better Man. My name's Ian. This is my second post on my YouTube channel, so hope you enjoy it. Production's pretty low. As you can see, I'm sitting here in my shed because this is where I'm most comfortable. Some people might have seen me in the past with nice short hair, cleanly shaven, wearing a suit, but basically this is who I am. I'm a t-shirt guy who likes to wear his shorts and thongs, which is how I'm dressed at the moment. And sit in his shed and mess around and do his stuff. I suppose that's a little bit what life is like. We spend so much of our time not doing the things that we really want to, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Yesterday I was talking about my mantras, or the things that I do every day, about being peaceful, being mindful, letting things go, fixing things that you can, not getting angry, and in my particular case writing about it or talking about it. But today I want to talk about how I actually got to that point. And I said yesterday that I suddenly woke up and I realised that I wasn't the person that I wanted to be. And I realised, why was that? How did I actually come to that conclusion that I wasn't the person that I wanted to be? And that was because I wasn't living my values. And people will say, oh yeah, I always live my values, I'm honest, I tell the truth, I do all those sort of things. Well, do you really know what your values are? You ever sat down and written them out? Because I did. Down below, when I try and figure out how to actually do this, I'll put a link to a little bit of a list. There's about 400 values in that. So you can go through that list, and the little trick is that you pick your top 10 values, then you pick your top 5 values, then you pick your top value. And you've got to be really honest with yourself, because some of the things that might be virtuous values, like being honest and telling the truth and having integrity, they might not be in your top 10. You might things like being famous, dressing well, being respected. Well, the one thing about values is they're all about you. So you've got to actually sit down there and say, who am I, and what really are my values? Now, I once had it explained to me like this, and I know it's all sort of a little bit hippie-ish at this stage, where it says, life's like a big river, alright? It's always changing, it's always flowing, but in that river, there's little rocks and a few stones, and they get moved around by the current, alright? And then there's also these big boulders. They're the ones that are attached to the bedrock. They never change. Even though the river may be changing, you may be looking at it different, maybe silty one day, maybe clear another day, the river runs through these areas where the big boulders are and the little rocks are. When there's floods or when there's drought, what happens is the little boulders and the little pebbles and the little rocks, they move. Well, they're your beliefs, right? Because your beliefs are the things like, you might believe that a politician's a good bloke, and later on you change that idea because the storms come his way and the river's flowing hard and he's turned over, and you've actually seen that there's something under that rock that you don't like. So as a result, your beliefs can actually change through your life. You're allowed to believe in all sorts of certain things. But one thing that will never change are your values, right? They're those big boulders. It doesn't matter about the storms, it doesn't matter about the floods, it doesn't matter about the earthquakes. There's a fair chance that they're not going to change. Of course, some things in your life may happen, and your values do change. But you can rely on them. I think, I don't do any research into too much stuff, and there's a lot of things that we believe, right, that later on in life we find out are not true. But I believe that your values are set pretty young in life. And then you make a decision as to whether you're going to actually live them or whether you're not. Now, part of my Being a Better Man project is I suddenly woke up one morning and realised that I wasn't living my values. I really wasn't being the person that deep down inside I was. My big boulders, I don't know whether they were covered in moss or whether they were underwater or whether I just wasn't looking at them. Perhaps those big boulders were the elephant in the room that I was ignoring. So I sat down and I worked out what my values were, and I started to try and live them. And my values, which I can tell you right now, came down to 4 things. And that was service, integrity, loyalty, and knowledge. Now, as that turns out, that's really convenient because it actually spells silk, S-I-L-K. And this was actually explained to me that, silk is a really interesting thing. It's one of the strongest things in the entire world. You know, like little silkworms, they're making silk, and per weight and per size, it's stronger than steel, it's stronger than copper, it's stronger than all other sorts of wire. So that sort of fitted really well with me as well when I did the little acronym and worked out that, you know, it could be ilks, but, you know, it was better off being silk. So when I look at my values, and I try and live them every day as well, which is the hardest thing, it's no point having values and mantras like I have unless you live them. Now, for me, silk, service, integrity, loyalty and knowledge. And I spell it too. Big S, small I, big L, big K. The reason being is that service is really important. If you're not serving others, right, you're really serving yourself. And in today's society, most of us go around serving ourselves. What can we get out of this? And that's actually dictated to us by the people that I call the merchants of misery. And that is basically, I used to think only advertising, right? And the people always telling us that whatever we've got is not good enough. The merchants of misery. But it's also our news services. Last night I watched the news, which I rarely do because it just depresses me and it influences me too much about the things that I should be concerned about in the world. Now I watch the news and they use the word horror, catastrophe, I think 7 to 12 times. I lost count because I was so horrified that they were using horror all the time. Horrific car accident and horrific fire. You know, can't they just report the facts? But anyway, going back to what I was saying, service is the service of others, right? And recently my wife and I travelled overseas and we were in Indonesia. And in Indonesia they have two terms, which is saya, which is me, and anda, which is you. And the funny part is that anda, A-N-D-A, right, is spelt with a capital A. And saya, which is me, is always spelt with a small s. Because in their culture, the other person is more important. And I think in your general life, if you have an actual attitude of service, that my job on this planet is to make other people's lives better, well, then I think it's always going to work out good for you. I do have a terrible saying that goes with that, which is no good turn goes unpunished. But I think I'd rather work on the fact that I'd rather be punished for a good turn than for being nasty. Now, the second part of my values, or my four most important values, is integrity. Now, in silk, that's spelt with a small I, and people always say to me, oh, don't you think integrity is very important, Ian? I say, no, integrity is spelt with a small I because it's the small things. You know, recently a whole bunch of people that I was associated with got into trouble. And they got into trouble for petty stealing. They stole things worth $2, $4. As a result, it wrecked their lives. You know, they're probably going to get into a lot of trouble for it in the end because, you know, that's still going on. But someone was saying to me, oh, why did they get in trouble for that? You know, it was only worth $2, $4. And I said, well, tell me the threshold in value that it's okay to take other people's property without permission. It's okay to steal. Can you steal something worth $2? Can you take a pen from work? Well, if you can take a pen from work, fuck it, take the photocopier. Actually, better than that, take the boss's car home. Because integrity is about the little things. It's also about the way you think about those little things. Is it okay to pinch that grape when you're in the supermarket? Is it okay to eat a bit of fruit or to do that? Because they're the things that you've got to make up in your own mind when you're looking at your own values. What is okay? For me, integrity is always about the little things. My third one is loyalty. Now, loyalty is a really interesting thing, and it's a value that challenges me constantly. Because the first thing that I always say I must be loyal to is my values. I must be loyal to myself and the way that I'm thinking. Now, often that causes problems when you're with your mates. Your mates are doing things that you don't want them to. And bear in mind, I've been the mate in the past that's been doing things that I shouldn't be. So how do I be loyal to my mate? I think you be loyal to your mate by stopping them doing something they're going to regret. And secondly, when they do get themselves into a bit of trouble, you can still stand next to them and be loyal. You don't have to agree with your mates. You don't have to always say, yeah, let's all do this together. Because loyalty is about standing next to someone when they're in their hardest time and saying, I'm still your friend. I don't disagree with what you do. I disagree with what you're doing, but I'm still your friend. So loyalty is really my top value because it's being loyal to yourself, it's being loyal to your mates, it's being loyal to the laws of your country, it's being loyal to your government, it's being loyal to your friends, it's being loyal to humanity. So loyalty for me is so complex, yet it is the epitome of the ultimate value that's me. My third value is knowledge, because I think the day that you stop learning in this world is the day that you really die. And I think you've got to start to create things yourself. You've got to share knowledge. A really smart man once said to me when he was telling me all of these things, and I said, wow, this is great, thank you for that. I said, what do you want in return? He said, I don't want anything in return. Knowledge is to be shared. And we so often hold back knowledge because knowledge gives us power. And, you'll find lots of people and lots of organisations won't share everything with their subordinates. They won't tell them what's going on. They won't teach them how to do things because knowledge is power. But most of us get it for free. We have a virtual free education system. We did have a free university, which we now have to pay for, but most of the knowledge in the world is there for us to be shared. Of course, the internet has made that completely crazy because there's lots of knowledge out there and there's lots of rubbish out there as well, but you can always go and find something. Knowledge is free and you've got to keep adding to it. So that's how I got to my values. And I think one of the most important things is I ask people all the time what their top values are and they don't know. I think what happens is the merchants of misery tell us that we need to consume, right? They tell us that we need to be up to date with the news. We have to know what the Kardashians are doing. We have to know, who's going to be chucked out of, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. As opposed to actually thinking about what is my life about? What are my real values and am I living them? And if I'm not, why aren't I living them? Which brings me on to the subject that I often ask people what their values are. I also ask them another thing. If you could be anything, what would you be? And they often say, oh, I don't know. Because for me, I've always known, I want to be an astronaut. Now, I know that's probably not going to happen. But I really have another passion. And I'm doing my passion now. I always wanted to be a writer. And I knew that. So I often ask people, what is your passion? And, why aren't you doing that? And they say, well, I don't know what I want to do. And a lot of those people sort of, my age, they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, and they don't know. And I think that's just a little bit of a shame. So the only thing I'm going to really say in relation to this particular post or blog or video or whatever I'm going to call it, is that have a look at your values. I'll put a link down below to a sheet. You can just print it out or you can just look through it and figure out what your values are and then say, have I been living them? And should I live them, right? And am I going to live them? And in the end, that's who we really are. And if we suppress living our values, then we're not really living. So I have now made a huge mistake and gone on for, I think, 13 minutes. Most people aren't to this stage, I'd say, watching this video, because probably I wouldn't be. So thanks very much for watching. Go to the link and go onto my blog, which is www.beingabetterman.net. Net it is. And have a look at that value sheet. Print it out and perhaps see whether your life is really what you want it to be and if you've been living it the way you should be. But in the end, it's entirely a matter for yourself. Thanks very much for watching.